The judge looked me straight in the eye and said, "We're ready to make a ruling." My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. My hands clutched the table, so tightly I felt my nails dig into the wood. This was it. I was about to lose my son. Then, out of nowhere, Theo, my 6-year-old, stood up from the gallery. He walked to the center of the courtroom, a piece of crumpled paper clenched in his little hands. I recognized it. He'd folded it into his Spider-Man backpack that morning. His voice was soft but steady. "Your Honor," he said, "I want to read something." The room fell silent. No one moved. There he was, this small boy in an oversized sweater, standing alone before the judge, holding a letter like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I couldn't move. I just watched, my heart thudding so hard it physically hurt. What he said next changed everything. "My name is Jessica Carter. I'm 33 years old, a freelance graphic designer, and the mother of Theo, who's 6. He loves dinosaurs, peanut butter on everything, and sleeping with the lights on. He has my eyes and his father's calm, observant nature. Our life used to be simple. Not perfect, but ours. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. The rent was manageable, the backyard big enough for a second-hand swing set and a sandbox. Then Aaron, my husband, Theo's father, died in a car accident. It was a rainy Tuesday. I still remember what I was cooking when the phone rang. Chicken stir-fry. I've never made it again. Losing Aaron shattered everything. He was my partner, my safe place. Without him, I felt unmoored. But Theo needed me, so I kept going. I made his lunches, walked him to kindergarten, smiled when I felt like collapsing. I cried into laundry piles and hid my grief behind closed doors. But I showed up, every single day. Theo and I grew closer than ever. He'd crawl next to me on the couch and whisper, "Don't be sad, Mommy. I'm here." We didn't need many words. We just understood each other. And then there was Margot. My mother-in-law never liked me. I wasn't from the right kind of family. She called me a good-hearted girl who should have stayed in her lane. Aaron always defended me, said she'd come around. She never did. After Aaron died, Margot slowly inserted herself into our lives. At first, I thought it was grief. I welcomed her, invited her to birthdays and recitals. But her comments never stopped. "He needs more structure. You're coddling him. You let him dress like that." One day, I caught her showing Theo a brochure for a fancy prep school I'd never heard of. When I told her it wasn't in our budget, she just sipped her tea and said, "Not every mother understands what's best for her child." That's when I started setting boundaries, limiting visits, setting expectations. Things turned cold. Then one weekend, Theo came home from her place and asked, "Mommy, do you think I'd be happier living with Grandma?" It felt like a knife in the chest. I knew. This wasn't about concern. It was about control. 2 weeks later, I got the envelope, a petition for full custody. She claimed I was emotionally unstable, financially insecure, and incapable of providing a stable home. Some of it hurt because it wasn't entirely false. I was grieving. I was tired, but I was also present, loving and fiercely protective. I called my sister Lena. She drove over right away. "She's playing dirty," Lena said. "But you can't let her win." I couldn't afford a fancy lawyer. I got a public defender, kind but overworked. He told me to stay calm, document everything. Margot, meanwhile, hired one of the best family attorneys in the county. I started building a case. School records, doctor's notes, drawings Theo made, photos, teacher emails. Every night after Theo went to bed, I sat on the floor surrounded by paperwork like armor. Court was brutal. Margot sat in her tailored suit, smiling at Theo like the loving grandma. But her eyes were locked on me, cold and calculating. Her lawyer painted me as unstable, lonely, unfit. She suffers from anxiety. She's grieving. She has no nearby support system. I wanted to scream, but I stayed still, respectful. Like my lawyer said. At home, Theo began to sense something was wrong. One night, while brushing his teeth, he asked, "Am I going to have 2 homes now?" I didn't have an answer. So I lied. "No, baby. Mommy's just handling some grown-up stuff. Everything's going to be okay." Margot escalated. An anonymous CPS report, claiming I'd left Theo alone. A caseworker showed up unannounced. Theo was at the kitchen table, building Legos. I gave a tour, answered every question, offered contact info for doctors and teachers. She left politely, but the fear lingered like smoke. That night, I cried into a laundry basket. The next day, Theo drew a picture of the two of us holding hands in front of our house. A speech bubble floated over me. I love you more than everything. I put it on the fridge and stared at it for a long time. I didn't know how this would end, but I knew I wasn't giving up. Not on my son. The night before the final hearing, I barely slept. I spread papers across the kitchen table. Schoolwork, medical notes, photos, drawings, even the flyer from the libraries, Mommy and me, story time we went to every week. I was preparing for war. Then, in that courtroom, just before the judge gave her ruling, Theo stood up and changed everything. His voice echoed in the silence. I want to read something. He unfolded the paper with shaky hands. I love my mom. She makes me feel safe. She gives me hugs when I have bad dreams. She makes dinosaur-shaped pancakes and helps me pick out my socks. I want to live with her forever. The courtroom stayed quiet, but I saw something shift in the judge's face. And for the first time in months, I had hope. I had to prove that Theo wasn't just getting by with me, he was thriving. But doubt kept slipping in like water through cracks. What if the judge saw me the way Margot did? What if grief made me look weak? What if being kind, soft, and honest meant I wasn't enough to be a mother? Lena came over to help me prepare. She brought snacks I didn't touch and a folder stuffed with old photos. Theo's 3rd birthday, his first day of preschool, a selfie of us baking cookies, flour dusting our noses like snow. She reached across the table, placed her hand on mine, and said softly, "You've got everything you need. Just let them see the real you." That night, after she left, I found Theo sitting on the floor in his room, hunched over a piece of lined notebook paper. "What are you working on, buddy?" I asked, kneeling down. He looked up, his eyes too serious for 6 years old. "A letter," he said, "for the judge." I blinked. "A letter?" He nodded. "Just in case they don't know how much I want to stay with you." My throat tightened. "Theo, that's so sweet, but—" "It's okay, Mommy," he said quickly. "I won't say anything mean about Grandma. I just want them to know what it's like to be with you." He folded the letter neatly and slipped it into his backpack. "I'll bring it, just in case." Part of me wanted to stop him, to protect him from carrying this burden. But the other part, the one that knew just how deeply this little boy felt the world, simply pulled him into a hug and held on. The morning of the final hearing was gray and cold. Theo wore his favorite navy sweater, the one with the tiny dinosaur patch on the sleeve. I braided his hair into the little bun he liked, packed an extra snack, and we drove in silence. Margot arrived in a tailored coat and polished heels. Her lawyer followed, briefcase gleaming like a warning. I focused on Theo's small hand wrapped in mine. When the judge called us forward, I stood with my lawyer and took a breath that barely made it into my lungs. Margot's attorney spoke first. Polished, confident, clinical. He talked about financial security, routine, and simulated stability, live-in help, elite schooling, structured aftercare. He painted my home as unstable, chaotic, ruled by emotion. I kept my face still. I heard Lena's voice in my head. "Let them see who you are." When it was my turn, I told the truth. I spoke about our routines, our quiet rituals, bedtime stories, homework at the kitchen table, pancakes on Sundays. I shared reports from Theo's teachers and notes from his pediatrician. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I just told the story of our life, one ordinary, beautiful piece at a time. The judge began to lean forward, signaling the end. Then Theo tugged my hand. He stood up, walked to the center of the courtroom, and held up a folded piece of paper. "Your Honor," he said, clear and calm. "Can I read something?" The courtroom froze. The judge blinked, startled. "You wrote something, son?" Theo nodded. "Yes, sir. It's for you." Silence. The judge looked at me, then back at Theo. "All right. Go ahead." Theo unfolded the paper carefully, smoothing the creases. His little hands trembled just slightly, but his voice was steady. "My name is Theo Carter. I'm 6 years old. I like dinosaurs, grilled cheese, and playing with my mom. I want to live with my mom." No one moved. She gives me hugs when I feel bad. She makes pancakes on Sundays and lets me pour the syrup even when I spill it. She laughs at my jokes, even the ones that aren't funny. When I have nightmares, she lets me sleep in her bed. She calls me her heart. Tears burn my eyes. I didn't blink. I couldn't miss this. Theo continued, his voice softer but no less sure. Sometimes we miss my dad and we cry together. But then she tells me stories about him. We light a candle and say good things. She says it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be happy again, too. He looked up at the judge. I know Grandma loves me, but she says my mom is too soft. I think soft is good. I don't want to live somewhere I can't feel stuff. I want to live with the person who lets me be a kid. He folded the paper and looked around the room. No one breathed. I just thought you should know, he added quietly. Thank you. Then he turned, walked back to me, and slid into the seat beside me. He took my hand. I squeezed his hard. I was the one who needed to feel safe now. The judge sat back in his chair, silent for a long moment. The air was heavy, electric. This court acknowledges the statement by Mr. Theo Carter, he said. While children are rarely asked to speak in cases like these, it's clear that his words were his own and reflect a striking emotional clarity. I find them compelling. My heart jumped, but held. He turned to Margot's attorney. I've reviewed the petition and all supporting documentation. There is no record of neglect or abuse, no professional concern for the child's welfare, and no credible evidence that Miss Carter is unfit. Financial disparity alone is not sufficient grounds for removal, especially not when the child appears emotionally secure and deeply bonded with his mother. Margot opened her mouth, but the judge raised a hand. Furthermore, he continued, the child's expression of his needs and wishes carry significant weight in this court's decision. He looked at me, and something in his eyes softened. Miss Carter, the court finds that you are fit to retain full legal and physical custody of your son. Any visitation with Mrs. Langston may be arranged through mediation. This court sees no grounds for further pursuit of custody transfer. I sat frozen, and then the weight, the unbearable, crushing weight, lifted. I pulled Theo into my arms. He wrapped himself around me, tight and sure like always. Only this time, I was the one who needed to be held. Margot didn't say a word as we walked past her. She sat rigid, her jaw tight, her knuckles white around the handles of her designer purse. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I just kept walking, holding Theo's hand like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds. It wasn't warm, not really, but it felt lighter somehow. Theo squinted up at me and smiled. Did I do okay, Mommy? I knelt down and kissed his forehead. You saved us. The next day, the house felt different, not in any visible way. Theo still woke me up early, dragging me into the kitchen to help him pour cereal. The couch still had that one spring that creaked. The lavender-scented candle we lit during breakfast still flickered on the counter. But something inside me had shifted. I hadn't just survived. I had fought, and I had won. That morning, I found his letter taped to the refrigerator with a dinosaur magnet. The same letter he read in court. His name was written in red crayon at the bottom, next to a crooked little heart. I stood there reading it again, line by line, until my eyes blurred and I had to sit down. He hadn't written that for the court. He had written it for me. Not because I asked, not because he thought it would change the outcome, but because he saw me, because he felt the bond we shared and, in his own small way, chose to protect it. That afternoon, we went to the park, just the two of us. I let him stay on the swings as long as he wanted. I bought him ice cream, even though dinner was an hour away. When we got home, he asked if we could call his dad's old number and leave a message like we used to. I held the phone to his ear. Daddy, he whispered. The judge said I get to stay with Mommy. I was brave, just like you. This time, I couldn't hold back the tears. People underestimate kids. They think being young means not understanding. But Theo understood everything. He felt the tension in the air. He saw the stress etched on my face, heard the whispered phone calls, noticed the nights I lingered at his bedside just a little longer than usual. And still, he chose love. He chose hope. A few weeks later, we met with a court-appointed mediator to discuss Margot's visitation rights. It was civil if strained. I agreed to supervised monthly visits. Not because I wanted her in our lives, but because Theo loved her in his own way. And I didn't want to teach him that love had to be tethered to resentment. She never apologized. Not for the custody battle. Not for the lies in court. Not for trying to take away the life I'd built. But it didn't matter anymore. She no longer had the power to undo me. Through it all, I learned something I'll never forget. Being a mother doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean having the biggest house, or the highest paycheck, or knowing the answer every time. It means showing up, especially when you're tired, terrified, and full of doubt. It means choosing love even when you feel like you have nothing left to give. And it means being soft enough to care deeply, and strong enough to never let go. There was a time I thought softness made me weak. That my tears, my tenderness, my constant holding on proved Margot right. But now I understand, softness isn't weakness. Softness is strength in its most courageous form. Theo taught me that. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, afraid it was all a dream. I'll tiptoe down the hall and peek into his room. There he'll be, legs tangled in the covers, one arm draped around his stuffed tiger, mouth slightly open. I'll just stand there for a moment, watching, breathing. We're okay. More than okay, we're whole. If you're a parent, or if you've ever fought to protect someone you love, you know this feeling. The fear, the fury, the fire that rises when you're told you're not enough. And I hope you also know your love matters. Even when it's quiet, even when it's doubted, even when no one else sees it but the person you're fighting for. And if no one's told you today, you're doing better than you think. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or a moment you had to rise when it was hardest, please take a second to like this video. Share it with someone who might need hope today. Maybe someone going through their own custody battle, or someone just trying to hold their family together, one day at a time. And leave a comment below. I want to hear your story. Have you ever been told you weren't enough? What did you do? How did you rise? If you want more stories like this, real stories about love, strength, and the moments that change us, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. From one heart to another.